Hello, Skin Angels, and welcome to the Skin Angels podcast. I'm very excited today to have Dr. Manju Dawkins, the founder of Thimble Health, with me today, and we're going to ask her a whole bunch of questions. But Dr. Dawkins, could you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Manju Dawkins. Again, I'm a board-certified dermatologist and mom of 2 girls and created and co-founded Thimble.
Fantastic. And I have to first disclose that I am a proud advisor and investor and cheerleader for Thimble. Could you tell us a little bit about Thimble and what you're all about, what the idea was and kind of what the impetus was to build it?
Sure. The impetus was actually having my first daughter when I was a third-year dermatology resident. Motherhood was a challenge, and then I really thought, okay, I got the healthcare part down. But when I took her in for her first vaccines, it was not a great experience. She got stuck and she just looked straight up at me with this look of betrayal and pain. How could you let this happen to me? And I was just kind of bewildered myself. And I don't know. How could I let that happen? I didn't do my job to protect her. And, what always strikes me about that moment, first moment of broken trust between a parent and child. And also it's the first moment of broken trust between a patient, and her physician. So that moment really, really stuck with me. And then I thought, okay, what can I do for myself? And I ended up hacking a solution for myself with a medicine that we dermatologists use quite often called EMLA. But there were a lot of issues with it, which you all know about. So eventually I just decided okay, it's not just a me problem. It's an everybody problem. What can we do to make this better? And so Thimble was born. So Thimble is a platform of products to lessen the pain of injections, both before, during, and after. So it's to treat the problem of needle aversion comprehensively. And I think it's a real reason why people avoid a lot of the care that's necessary. And so I hope that we can empower patients, empower caregivers, and also empower healthcare professionals.
Gosh, I love it. And what could be better than that? That's one of those situations where everybody wins. The patient wins, the healthcare professional wins, you win, the world wins. It's just one of those things where the alignment is really nicely put together. Now, was there an early surprise, would you say? Was there a moment when you started this, you were excited, enthusiastic, when you felt like reality didn't match your expectations? What were some of the challenges maybe early on that you were like, whoa?
I have to admit, have there been challenges at every step of the way. I think when I started, I was like, this is so obvious. This is going to be a piece of cake, and you know how they always say it's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much. Well, I might put another multiple on that. So, yeah, I mean, there's been so many points, but I think the big takeaway was I thought if you build it, they will come. And to a degree, that's been true. But now I have learned the importance of marketing and the importance of, honestly putting dollars behind marketing. That's my current learning. But there's just been different processes along the way. I knew the R&D was going to be a challenge. I knew that. I knew the R&D was going to be hard. And I did think that was going to be the hardest part. And there's just have been new challenges at every step, but there's also been new learnings at every step. So I'm grateful for each one of them.
I love that. Now, can I just dig in a little inside baseball? Because I think a lot of people listening understand that many of us are clinicians. We have clinical experience in dermatology, but the formulation step, especially for something you're doing, I mean, yours is closer to a device. You have adhesives and you have the way that it's very clever. The inside peels out from the external ring. How did you go about that? What kind of knowledge did you have going in, and what kind of knowledge were you able to put together, and what kind of team did you use, or what resources did you use? Of course, keeping whatever has to remain confidential, but for those who might be interested in something similar, how daunting was it, and how were you able to kind of do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. And I think, my strength, being a dermatologist, understanding, penetration through the skin was a huge, it allowed for this to happen. And in fact, early on when I was kind of is this possible? Why isn't anybody doing this? Literally opened one of our old dermatology textbooks and just looked at the pharmacokinetics of what already existed. And it was up right there in front of me that I was we can do this. It has been done before, in fact, but why aren't we doing this? And so sometimes it's just the answers are right in front of you. But that being said, there's a lot that I don't know. There's so much I don't know about formulation, how to do this and how to do that. So what I did was I literally took a little notebook, a children's notebook to be clear, and just sketched out what I thought, would be a useful product for people. And it's actually kind of insane how close to that initial drawing it all came out to be. But it had to go through hundreds and hundreds of iterations before it came back to whatever that drawing was. And it's kind of remarkable, but it's taken so many people. So, utilizing the right researchers to help, do the work of creating the right formulation. Understanding, like, how do you go from that little sketch that you've made into a CAD drawing, and how does that so we have an amazing product designer who's taken us all the way through that, testing different materials. Like, it's just so much we don't know, but the good news is there are so many people around us who do know, and there's so many people who are excited to help build something that can help others. So that has just been like such a learning and such a blessing.
I think that that is something we're going to hear over and over again, that we bring a lot with us, a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge, and the vision. That's the secret, right? You brought a real vision that ended up wonderfully being quite similar to what actually came out. But to get there, there's some ups and downs. Were there some lessons that you've learned both working in dermatology, maybe, or just healthcare overall, that you think makes this a little more challenging or different than being an innovator in other areas?
Yeah. I definitely think that our training in medicine is wonderful in so many ways, but we tend to think about risk always. And so it's almost like an always what could go wrong here type of mindset, which we have to be when we're taking care of people's lives. Like, that's important. But I think with innovation, you have to put that aside and kind of open up to what could be instead. So kind of thinking more expansively, especially early on, I think you really have to dream up like what could possibly be. And then naturally the challenges are going to whittle down what you can maybe do, but maybe they won't. And maybe you can make exactly what you had in mind. So I think kind of letting go of that, that kind of limiting belief, I think, is really essential. And what honestly has been the biggest challenge for me, because it's so ingrained and the training is so long. And so you do kind of just think like, okay, these are my limits, but actually it's just so much more. There's just so much more available to us. And so just accessing that and knowing that there is possibility. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things. And also just the idea that, like, sometimes the blocks are going to come along the way. There are going to be challenges, going to be hurdles, but sometimes that is exactly the blessing that you need. Like, the obstacle is the way, like, I just think back, we were developing the Prepare patch. I thought, okay, we've got this formulation. It took hundreds of different iterations. We had the formulation, but then we ran into a roadblock in terms of manufacturing, like getting that formulation, to production turned out to be a really big challenge. Finding the right manufacturer, that kind of thing. And so, it was paralyzing for a second, but actually it was an opportunity for us to then develop the Recover patch, which is our plant-based patch that lessens the soreness and tenderness afterwards. And so that space ended up being the huge opportunity. And it turns out that the Recover patch ended up being ready before the Prepare patch. So, yeah.
Can I ask you about the Recover patch? Because I think that is such a unique and innovative part. It really is different fundamentally than the Prepare patch. Was that part of the original vision, or was that something that as you started working, you thought, there's a real opportunity here too, and this is a blank space when you think about the experience?
It was actually part of the original vision. I just didn't think I would have the space to do it so early on. And I mean, for me personally, it's just, I think, important to think about all of the modes of healing that we have available to us. Like, again, like our training in medicine and in dermatology, we're getting so much better about this. And that's what I love. But traditionally, especially in med school, for me, it was really just pharmaceuticals that could work, or it was surgical interventions that could work. And we know as dermatologists, there's so much more. And so, yeah, I mean, just for me, my personal story is that my grandfather happens to be a homeopathic doctor, and my ancestors before that were all Ayurvedic doctors. I have no formal training in any of those, but I think that there's part of that that's kind of like in my DNA to a degree. And so, to be able to develop a plant-based patch that could really, really solve this problem in a safer, effective way was just a privilege. So that's kind of the origin story of the Recover patch.
I love it. And now this is good momentum happening here. So my next question is about the turning point. Do you feel like there was a specific moment or moments when you felt like things started to come together, things were starting to work, and you felt like, okay, this is going to actually be a thing. This company is really going to come off the ground running? Or did you feel that way from the very beginning?
I have to say that I just have always had a deep knowing that this is going to be like, this is happening. So you can either get on this train or not. Like, it's just inevitable. We human beings do not like pain. And, you can just see the erosion of trust happening in healthcare. This is an inevitability, in my opinion. But the rest of the world might not have thought so. And so, yeah, there've been many moments. And I think like a lot of the small moments to me are the ones that really, and the one that's kind of coming to mind right now is, There was a 9-year-old patient who had severe needle phobia, and she had 2 child life specialists helping her. They literally did 2 sessions, and one of the child life specialists used her own money to buy prepare patches. 2 sessions, 1 prepare patch, and it transformed everything. She said, I didn't feel anything, and she's not scared of needles anymore. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is even more powerful than I'd even imagined that it could be. And it's just like, it's such a fulfilling moment to have that experience. And then beyond that, I thought, change is really hard for us. We know this, as a physician, I know this, it's hard to change practice, but I also know the pain point of causing pain to our patients is also very, very painful. So I kind of had thought that it would be a challenge to get physicians on board for this kind of thing, because it's just not part of how we were trained. And I have been so pleasantly surprised by the adoption. People are just excited to have an option to make things easier for people. And that has been so, so fulfilling. One of my favorite moments, I have to share this. Okay. We surveyed, 50 healthcare professionals to try to understand, what would the benefit of something like Thimble be to you? And I thought people would answer with a lot of kind of, things that would help them personally. It would save me time. It would make me safer, but the most common answer was this would improve my ability to provide compassionate care. And I think that is so important for other people to hear, because again, this erosion of trust is such a huge problem in healthcare. And the thing that people need to know is your healthcare people care about you, and that we're all on the same team and we all want to make it better for you. And so I just, that is powerful. And I feel like that's the power of these patches, is how do we bring the human beings back together in healthcare? It's powerful.
I totally love that. I often tell a story. I run that pain-free dermatology session at American Academy of Derm. I've done it for a number of years. And I often tell the story that my first foray into dermatology, after doing a peds internship where everything was based on pain-free pediatrics. But one of the first cases was a molluscum case where we just had to hold the kid down, and my attending was curetting off all these molluscum. The kid was screaming and the mom was crying and I was sweating. And I think about this compassion, as you say, in healthcare. I think we don't want to torture our patients. We really do want to relieve suffering. And what a beautiful, direct way to do that. It's here literally is a tiny patch that will quite literally relieve pain and suffering and prevent it, which is so powerful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I have to tell you that I snuck into one of your talks very early on when we just started building this. And that was one of those moments where I was like, see, I knew this is going to be a thing. I promise you. And it's taken more time than I maybe anticipated, but it's happening. So I'm excited. And thank you for speaking about it. Because I think, what you validated specifically, and I didn't even know you yet, I just went to your talk, was that feeling that I had as a resident. I just so strongly remember being like, I don't want to do this biopsy on this 3-year-old right now, because I know that I can give them Emla and I can bring them back. I knew there was a better way to do it. And that pain of doing it, it just was a really heart-wrenching, awful feeling. But I remember at that time questioning myself, being like, see, I'm not a good doctor. Look, I can't even do this biopsy on this kid. What's wrong with me? I thought there was a problem with me. But now, having had more experience, I realized that empathy that we have as human beings is not a bad thing. And maybe the system doesn't allow for us to kind of express that empathy. We have limited time with patients now and all of that, but that feeling is what brought Thimble to the fore. So I think I am grateful for all of it.
One of the things that really stands out is how, despite the fact that you are an expert and an experienced clinician in this domain, I feel like part of the superpower was that beginner's mind, right? You were kind of like, well, there might be stuff I don't know. There might be obstacles, but I love the way you said it. The obstacle is the way. We're going. And now I guess I would ask you, since you've been through some years now of building the company and growing the company and doing all this great stuff, if you could go back to day one and give yourself at that point a little bit of advice, is there anything you would tell yourself to do differently, or would you just do a cheer and say, you got this?
That's a great question. I think I would say, trust yourself more. I think I would say, feel no guilt about rest. I just think, honestly, what I've learned along the way is if you're not taking care of yourself, you cannot take care of anybody else, period. And that's true for every aspect of life, in family, in work, everywhere. And I think, as physicians, that's sometimes beaten out of us, and we're so used to taking care of everybody else around us. But But burnout is real, and burnout's real not just in medicine, but it's real in entrepreneurship too. It's real everywhere. So I do think it would be kind of honor yourself. And so saying that now, I would say, this is important stuff I think that people need to hear. Financially, you also have to take care of yourself. I think there's a little bit of martyrdom that's kind of imparted into us. And you can't keep going like that. So you've got to take care of yourself, financially, and you have to build it in your own way. Like, that's the whole thing about real innovation. Real innovation doesn't happen by replicating what all the people before you did. It happens by you doing what's in your heart and making that come out into the world. Like, I really think that's important. And it's not always talked about in entrepreneurship because I think we're so used to thinking with our left brain and logistics and looking at data. But you know what I've been thinking about lately, actually? Data. What is data? Data is looking at the past. That's not everything. What about the other side of the brain? What about our heart? Like, that's where new stuff comes from. That's where true new creation and innovation comes from. So, like, I just want to lean into that more.
Love that. Right. We want to get the new ideas so that there'll be data in the future, right? We're not interested in looking at what's out there. We already know. We want to make the next set of roads.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay. Now the signature question that we ask every guest. From where you're standing now, what challenge or opportunity in skin health do you think is most worth paying attention to over the next few years? And this could be something that you're thinking about going into maybe at some point, or maybe just something you've witnessed now that you are, relatively speaking, on top of a mountain.
Oh, that's such a good question. And there's so many things. I was just speaking to undergrads who are looking to do, kind of drug development in the dermatology space. And they were asking me this question. And I think given the way, everything is set up, they were looking at rare diseases, which I think is so important. But I actually think there's a lot of opportunity in kind of diseases that affect the masses, where we can think about the disease state differently and create innovation there. And what I love that I'm seeing already is that there's a lot of innovation in the over-the-counter space, meaning, like, traditionally, right, we've always looked at the traditional pharma route, and you go through the whole process, which is a very expensive one. And that's why drugs cost so much money. One of the reasons why drugs cost so much money. But I think if we can start to think about things differently, if we're thinking about acts and if we're thinking about impact, how can you create impact for the masses? Sometimes it's going a different path, and it's a non-traditional path. And maybe it doesn't have the same path to financial success as the companies from the past. But I just think there's a lot of opportunity there, for both financial gain and for impact. So let's go that route.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I can't wait to continue to follow and cheerlead you from the sidelines and, of course, help in any way that I can. And this has been an episode of the Skin Angels podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And we hope to see you at the next one.